Welcome to Girl Choose Yourself, where we're trading self-doubt for self-trust and settling for soaring. I'm Eimear, your host, and together we're building the confidence to create lives so deliciously bold that they scare us a little, but in the best possible way. Because life's too precious to stay cozy in our comfort zones. It's time to choose ourselves for lives that are fabulous and soulfully fulfilling. So let's go. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. There's a thought that lots of women live with, and I think that they live with it, we live with it, a lot of the time, or even most of the time. And that thought is, something is wrong with me. Not in a dramatic way, not as a constant crisis, just enough to keep us slightly tense, slightly self-monitoring, slightly on edge. And it shows up as questions like, why does this feel harder for me than it seems to for other people? Why can't I just get myself together? Why can't I just get my shit together? Why am I still struggling with this even now, after all this time, all these years? And even when life looks fine from the outside, that thought is often still there, quietly shaping how patient we are with ourselves, how much rest we allow ourselves to have, how conditional our self-acceptance is. Because if something is wrong with you, then of course you don't get to relax, not yet. And of course, kindness towards yourself, well, that has to wait. You must fix the problem first. You have to do better first. And then maybe, just maybe, you might allow yourself to feel okay, to give yourself a little bit of a breather. I know this pattern really intimately because, I've lived inside it. I lived inside it for so many years, the majority of my life, really. And I always had this internal voice that was scanning for faults, looking for what was wrong with me, why I wasn't enough yet, why I needed to try harder, to push harder, to be better, to be more. And when things weren't working, I never would question that voice. I totally believed it. And that belief pulled me into cycles of striving and self-punishment. And I would push myself relentlessly, then crash because I just could not sustain it. And then criticize myself for being tired, for not pushing hard enough, for, inverted commas, giving up. And it was really like rinse and repeat. Does this sound familiar to you? Have you experienced this yourself? What honestly really never occurred to me, not once, was to allow myself to be okay with myself. It never occurred to me to try this idea of self-acceptance. I thought self-acceptance was self-love. Gosh, the idea of that was just bloody dangerous. I genuinely believed there was this lazy, broken, sloth-like version of me underneath it all. That was the real me. And that if I stopped being hard on myself, that version would bloody well take over. And then I'd be doomed. Chaos would ensue. I thought that loving myself was just indulgent, self-indulgent. That it would just let me off the hook. That I'd just give up. That it would make me complacent. That it would erode my ambition. And in a way, I felt that self-love would be something that would actually, and I know this sounds really crazy, but it would prove to myself that I was, there was something wrong with me. I just, off you go and just love yourself. So instead, I really treated myself as a project to fix. Must fix this broken person. And somewhere along the way, I totally forgot myself. Definitely wasn't honoring myself. Protecting myself from myself. And here's the thing that matters, and this is where context really helps. When you believe something is wrong with you, conditional self-love makes absolute perfect sense. I'll be kinder to myself when I'm better. I'll accept myself when this is sorted out, when I've overcome this obstacle, when I've reached this goal, then I'll be nicer to myself. I'll relax when I finally feel more together. or relax when I've got all my ducks in a row and I've achieved, X, Y, and Z. I'll be nicer to myself when I've done these other things that I feel I should do to be enough in some way. And that mindset, it doesn't necessarily feel cruel. It feels like you're being responsible, like you're getting on with life, you're making something of yourself. But it quietly becomes a thief because it steals our ability to feel at home in our own lives. It steals our ability to feel like we belong. And I think for women, this doesn't happen at all in a vacuum. We live in a world where the default model of success was never designed with women's lives at the centre. It was built around linear careers, uninterrupted productivity, bodies that don't change, caregiving that doesn't interrupt, emotions that don't, inverted commas, get in the way. And that model, obviously, works very well for one kind of life trajectory. And when our lives don't match that trajectory, when they pause or cycle or they carry invisible labour or they bend and move in different directions, we don't question the model. We question ourselves. So instead of asking, bloody hell, is this standard even humane? We ask, what the hell's wrong with me? Why am I getting it done? Why am I able to? Must try harder. What's important to understand is that this belief, something is wrong with me, rarely comes out of nowhere. Most of us didn't decide to wake up one day and decide to be hard on ourselves. We learned it. We absorbed it. We learned it by being praised for being capable rather than human, by being rewarded for coping quietly without complaining, by absorbing the message that rest is earned, not allowed, not natural, and that love follows performance. And I think for women especially, we learned quite early on that being good, being okay, means that we're able to manage it all, get it all done. And so we internalize this idea that these uncomfortable emotions that come with traveling that terrain and carrying that burden, that means failure. That signals failure. That signals something is wrong with me. Why can't I do this? Why can't I meet this standard? Why can't I? What's wrong? And we don't recognize that we are operating in a system that doesn't honor our needs. It doesn't honor the different paths that we will take in life. It doesn't honor the different responsibilities that we may have. It just doesn't honor the truth of our lived experiences as women moving through this world. And we confuse having a difficulty, finding something difficult, with being defective ourselves. And once that belief sort of takes root, and it's so easy for it to take root, self-acceptance starts to feel like something you have to earn. And there's a real cost to that. It's subtle, but it's real. Joy gets postponed. Rest becomes something that we have to earn. And pride becomes conditional. We're always nearly there, but not quite. Always improving, but never bloody arriving. And the cruel irony is this: the harder you try to fix yourself, the further away any sense of ease feels. And it's not because we're failing, it's because we're measuring ourselves against a standard that was never neutral to begin with. I believe, and I invite you to consider this position, I believe that one of the biggest reasons that women resist self-acceptance or self-love is because we confuse it with giving up or giving in. We seem to think that acceptance means resignation, that kindness to ourselves means we're lowering our standards, and that compassion means stopping growth. It means just discarding ambition. And I absolutely believe this. I thought that the only thing keeping me functional was an intense, unrelenting pressure. And that if I stopped criticizing myself, which I considered It was criticism, but I probably was considering it self-motivation, that I'd stop moving forward. But what I eventually discovered is that pressure didn't make me disciplined. It just made me really brittle. It made me really brittle and rigid in my viewpoints. Self-acceptance really did not make me stop growing. It really made my growth sustainable. It brought that flexibility into my life. You know, the way they talk about in the wind, that tree that can't bend in the wind will break in the storm. And I definitely was somebody who was incredibly brittle, and flexibility and ease, all of that just felt terribly dangerous to me. I had to have this rigidity. It was very much black and white thinking. I felt that loving myself would really feed the worst parts of me. I thought that loving myself meant that I would just encourage the parts of me that I felt were the failings. And instead, it soothed the parts of me that were exhausted. We're absolutely exhausted from being in constant self-surveillance. And this realization really came through, that this part of me that I was trying to fix, to make better, was not broken at all. It was just bloody exhausted. And it was tired of being judged. It was tired of being pushed. It was tired of being, so tired of being judged and of trying to succeed inside a system that didn't account for the fullness of my life. I was measuring myself against a standard that was never appropriate for me. And it was cruel. I want to offer you something practical here, if any of this is resonating for you. And it's definitely not to fix you, but to change how you relate to yourself. The first thing that I found really useful and that I offer to you is just start noticing how often your inner voice is sort of in that self-surveillance mode. It's assessing you, your productivity, your emotional tone, your energy, your usefulness. Just notice it, that voice. What is the quality of that narrative? And then when that something is wrong with me thought shows up, I suggest that you offer this question. Instead of what's wrong with me or any thought that fits under that umbrella, try, what am I responding to right now? That goes under that question, under that judgment, because the judgment is a reaction really to something that we're feeling. And so when we ask that question, what am I responding to right now? That opens a door, and just get curious there. Another question that might help there is, what am I carrying? What am I carrying? And thirdly, what would support look like? What would be reasonable support here? I think those type of questions create a shift, because it moves us from self-blame, self-judgment, this self-surveillance with that negative perspective, to self-understanding. We're bringing curiosity to what's going on inside us. We're looking, I'm here to understand myself. And finally, practice offering yourself kindness without waiting for any improvement or any signal that you deserve it, any of those. Just offering it unconditionally. And use the same tone as you'd use with somebody that you love and that you care about, even if nothing has changed yet for you. And it sounds really simple and it can feel really challenging. I found it really easy to be a great cheerleader and encourage other people in their lives. And then I was so harsh and unrelentingly tough with myself, and so reluctant to offer myself love, kindness, that kind of loving support that I so naturally offered to a friend. So although this sounds simple, it can be quite difficult. So just being gentle with ourselves as we begin to turn that voice of kindness and understanding and support and love, instead of directing it outwards to those that we love, that we bring it towards ourselves. And noticing any resistance or reluctance there and just allowing that to be what it is. Again, don't bring any judgment to that. Just allowing it. If you recognize yourself in this, if you carry that quiet sense that something about you needs fixing, needs correcting and controlling and surveillance, I invite you to hear and accept this. Nothing is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You're not failing. You're not defective or broken. You're not behind in some imaginary race. You may simply be living inside standards that were never designed with your body, your cycles, or your responsibilities in mind. And real self-love, the kind that actually heals, begins when we stop turning systemic pressure into personal shame. You don't have to stop wanting more from life. You don't have to abandon ambition or growth or drive or your passion. But you do get to stop punishing yourself in the name of becoming something new and better and different. Because withholding love doesn't make us better. It just makes us bloody tired. We don't need fixing. We're amazing, magnificent human beings. Phenomenal women. I know you're a phenomenal woman. We just need permission, and you need to give yourself permission to belong to yourself right now, exactly as you are. I hope you found something in this episode that has served you. I look forward to catching up with you next week. Take care. Bye. Thanks so much for tuning into the episode this week. I hope you got a lot out of it, and if you did, please share it with somebody who you feel would benefit, and leave a review. Always greatly appreciated. Lots of free and paid resources to take things a step further. You can find those in the show notes. And hey, if nobody's told you this yet today, you are amazing, and the world is a far more beautiful place because you're here with us all. Stay cool. Bye.